Hello and welcome to another fantastic broadcast of TCS News. I'm Danny.
And I'm Ruth. Today we're going to give you an update on the situation in Gaza and we'll be talking about some events in TCS.
On May 12th, Israel decided to move into the city of Rafah. Rafah is a Palestinian territory in the southern portion of Gaza. Rafah has been one of the areas where Palestinians have fled since other areas of the Gaza Strip have been bombed. Since then, there has been a mass exodus of Palestinians from Rafah. An estimated 300,000 of 1 million Palestinians have fled Rafah since IDF aerial and ground forces have pushed into the territory. According to Israeli intelligence, Rafah is Hamas's last stronghold. They say that they must invade Rafah to deal the last knockout punch and to retrieve hostages kidnapped from Israel on October 7th. For these reasons, Israel is very adamant on their decision to move into the territory, despite massive global criticism. Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, says that an invasion of Rafah will be a humanitarian disaster as 700,000 Palestinians still reside in Rafah. He says that this would pull the plug on our efforts to support people as famine looms. Egypt has issued its strongest objection yet, saying that it intends to join South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice, reporting that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that a major ground offense would lead to a widespread civilian casualties and would spark a Hamas insurgency. Last week, President Biden said that he would halt certain shipments of weapons to Israel if they invade Gaza, which they have done since this morning. Biden says that we're not walking away from Israel's security. We're walking away from Israel's ability to wage war in those areas. Biden will continue to provide support to Israel's defense systems, such as the Iron Dome, but won't continue to supply weapons and artillery shells.
On May 10th, the Israeli UN ambassador shredded the UN charter before a vote on the Palestinian membership in the UN. Something more terrifying, if confirmed true, would be that there have been whistleblowers reporting to CNN that there are concentration camps in Palestine. These camps are shown to hold prisoners of people captured during Israel's invasion of Gaza. There were horrific reports of the conditions in these detention centers.
Here are some of the statements detailing life in these camps from the reports. We were told they were not allowed to move. They should sit upright. They were not allowed to talk, not allowed to peek under their blindfolds. Another whistleblower who worked as a medic at the facility's field hospital said they stripped them down of anything that resembles human beings. The beatings were not done to gather intelligence. They were done out of revenge, said another whistleblower. It was punishment for what the Palestinians did on October 7th and the punishment for behavior in the camps.
Personally, I think that the way this war is escalating is really nerve-wracking. I'm glad that the world is starting to admit to the atrocities that the Palestinians have been crying out about for months. Without the support of the U.S., the ability for Israel to deal significant damage to Rafah will be decreased. But quite frankly, they shouldn't go into Rafah regardless. Famine is looming over the Gaza Strip as a whole, and an invasion of Rafah with 700,000 Palestinians within the territory will surely result in many deaths. Ruth, what are your thoughts on this situation?
Danny, I fully agree with you. Just seeing how people are starving and being displaced is so hard. Not only are children losing their homes, but they're also losing family members, and sometimes to the point where they're just left orphaned. It's so frustrating seeing how Israel doesn't care about the people, but it's also infuriating to see well-developed countries turn a blind eye to all the war crimes that Israel is currently committing. I sincerely hope that this conflict comes to an end.
Now, let's move on to some TCS news. On Friday, we had the opportunity to have a conversation with Miss April Doherty. Miss April is a paralegal in the Felony Review Unit at the State's Attorney Office for Baltimore County. She's an investigator in cases that involve animal abuse. Miss April has many reasons for trying to help animals escape abusive households. She was raised in a very chaotic household that surrounded having parents with drug abuse, and because of that, she wasn't allowed to have friends. This led to her not socializing as much and for her to seek comfort in animals.
In addition, Miss April was the first person in her family to go to college in the last 50 years. She wanted to get into law school for college, but ended up being rejected. This had caused her to realize that being a lawyer wasn't what she wanted to do, but what her parents wanted her to do. She became a personal trainer a bit later and had been doing personal training for a little over 12 years now. Miss April actually got her degree in veterinary in 2022 and also works as a professor in Florida teaching online classes. Unfortunately, in 2020, Miss April was diagnosed with breast cancer. And because this was during the COVID-19 pandemic, she had to attend her chemotherapy appointments alone. She had also been going through a divorce and said that she really felt alone. She also chose to cut her long hair and donate it because it was a struggle to keep its original form because of chemotherapy.
However, there were two things that kept her pushing through. Her dogs, Orbit and Buddy, both rescues. She actually got to learn a lot from her dogs. She used to be a messy person who would have a multitude of things in her head, but she saw her dogs living life in the moment. She says that her dogs are her pride and joy and wants to spend as much time as she can with them because they're getting older.
In 2004, Miss April established the Animal Abuse Unit. She would receive reports from people who saw animals being abused, and Miss April would have to investigate the cases of each individual separately. In 2012, she had many cases piling up in her unit, which had led for the Animal Abuse Unit to become legally recognized. She says she also helps those animals because of the fact that it correlates to human trafficking. Aggressors manipulate and gaslight their victims by threatening them to do something to their beloved pets.
She also works for a retentive agricultural farm, tending to animals in their shelters. She helps raise them and feels that the way the farm makes food for them is a lot better than processed foods. In addition, she has gone to a multitude of different countries and states, passing certifications and helping people with their cattle and livestock. She recently went to Zimbabwe, in a rural area because people there weren't receiving enough rain and their cattle were having trouble.
Not only does Miss April do all these things, but she also helps women who are going through the same thing she went through with breast cancer. She makes sure that all the women don't have to stress and that she's there for them. So we would like to thank you, Miss April, for taking the time out of your day to come and talk to us. I was able to learn a lot, and I deeply appreciate what you do for creating a voice for those people and animals who live under abusive conditions.
I agree. Now, on Monday, we were able to have our Done Construction seminar. This is our last seminar of the year with Done Construction, so Miss Beth brought in Miss Shalon, a biologist and interior designer. Miss Shalon is a very cool and fascinating person. Growing up, she always said that she either wanted to become a doctor or a construction worker. She followed the science track initially, going to the University of Maryland to major in biology. She studied neuroscience in college and researched topics such as the question of why males are more predisposed to psychological disorders or are more often more neurodivergent. Later, she attended a predominantly African American school in New Orleans for people to get into medical school. She had spent over 15 years as a biologist doing neuroscience and making great contributions to science. She co-authored 4 to 5 scientific papers, but eventually she began to go down a different path. She had reached the highest point she could in her career with the education that she had.
In order for her to ascend in her career, she would need to go further in her education, which was a sacrifice that she felt wasn't meant for her. She wanted to do things that kept her happy and motivated, although she still loved science. At one point, she interviewed with Done Construction, but now she works as an interior designer. She taught at WU, a safe place for non-binary people to do construction. Later, she went to Penland School of Crafts as an assistant for woodworking. In this position, she was able to learn and work simultaneously while doing woodworking. She built several boxes, including a gift box that she showed us in class. In this box, she keeps sentimental items such as her roommate's wedding invitation.
I thought that this conversation was very interesting and that Miss Shalon was a kind and sweet person. I related to her interest in science, and I thought she was a very insightful and creative person. Thank you so much, Miss Beth, Miss Shalon, and Done Construction for this wonderful school year of seminars. We highly appreciate you all.
Speaking of Done Construction, we would like to introduce to you our special spotlight on Miss Beth. To give some background on Miss Beth, she was born and raised in Missouri. She was a union organizer for 20 years, and she actually made her way here to Baltimore doing her work. Miss Beth said that she had slowly seen how construction was and she would soon get into it. But why did she make her own company?
Well, Miss Beth says she made her own company because there were people close to her that wanted her help with building things. This gave her the idea of starting a business where she would help people construct and fix things. However, because she was a woman in a male-dominated industry, Miss Beth had many people underestimate her. Many people would think that Dunn Construction was a man-owned company, sometimes that she was an assistant of who they thought was going to do the work. But do you know how she got here at TCS?
She actually heard of TCS from one of her friends and chose to come and check it out. She said that the thing that caught her eye was the fact that students were excited and eager to learn about construction. She said that that's the reason she likes to continue coming every month to TCS. Ms. Beth said that her drive to continue doing her work is seeing how satisfied and glad her customers look. Even before her company, she continued to feel good about making others smile and happy. So thank you to Ms. Beth for being our spotlight on in this edition of TCS News. We really appreciate your hard work and dedication towards our community.
Yeah, I agree. On Tuesday, we had the chance to talk to Mr. Joe Manko. Mr. Joe is our program officer of education. He manages and looks out for organizations to fund and that help kids in school through the Able Foundation. He previously helped fund Ruth and I's middle school, Mother Seton Academy, and is now helping fund TCS. Mr. Joe was born in California, where he would move around to other states because he had parents who served in the military, and they would be relocated a lot. He mentioned that in the beginning, he would have a hard time adjusting to the new environments, but he quickly got used to moving, so he would adjust rather quickly. For college, Mr. Joe attended the University of California, Los Angeles. He said that he was taught a lot there, and it was pretty cheap, so he didn't pay that much for his student loans after he graduated.
In addition, he said he wanted to be a teacher since high school, so he found an organization called Teach for America, an organization that gets teachers to teach in small communities around the country. In 2002, Mr. Joe relocated to Baltimore, where he would teach various subjects in different schools. He would later become a principal trainee for a year and would be an elementary school principal for 10 years. In July of 2020, Mr. Joe joined the Able Foundation, where he would become the program officer of education. For the beginning of his job, he would have to work online and attend meetings on a Zoom call because of the pandemic, but he was still able to raise money for schools and organizations.
Mr. Joe Manko has come to TCS several times before. This time, he wanted to talk a lot about our school and how we function. He also looked into what makes our school so effective, and that's why we haven't replicated this system on a larger scale. We told him about the fact that people who come to the school have to be willing to change, and the individual attention that we get at TCS wouldn't be replicable if there were a lot more people. We also spoke to the fact that many students are more focused on having fun than actually learning, which contributes to their life and adds value to their education. Afterwards, we also gave Mr. Joe a tour, and he seemed really glad to be here. Overall, I believe the conversation was very engaging with a real back and forth. I also thought it was really good to give us a chance to reflect on our education and experiences at the school. I'd like to express our gratitude to him and the contributions of the Able Foundation to schools in Baltimore.
Speaking of contributions and donations, now we would like to thank the volunteers who brought in lunches.
Thank you, Ms. Sean, Kendall's aunt and sponsor, for providing the pizza, salad, and soda. And thank you, Ms. Tyrese, for providing the strawberry shortcake for Kennedy on her birthday. We appreciate your support and kindness toward the school.
Thank you, Mr. Kevin and Ms. Leah, for the delicious sandwiches. We always appreciate when you guys bring in lunches for the school.
Thank you so much, Ms. Panina, Ethan's aunt and sponsor, for the delectable sandwiches. I enjoyed the selection of meats. It was very tasty. We all appreciate you and all you guys do.
Thank you so much, Ms. Janae, Rhys and Quinn's mom and sponsor, for the amazing chicken primavera pasta. Your lunches are always so tasty. You're such a kind and sweet soul.
Thank you so much, Ms. Peck, for the amazing chicken Alfredo salad and fruit on Tuesday. We highly appreciate you for driving 2 hours every week to teach us ASL.
And thank you for watching this edition of TCS News. Bye.
Bye.